Well, I'm excited to be here, everybody. I hope you all are excited too. This is a subject that a lot of people have, never really even considered, but it's a real thing out there. So I'm so excited for the PDC group and Peter Daniels that's bringing it to you this afternoon. We're excited for the information that we're going to get and the golden nuggets that we're going to be able to get and use in our life now and as we move forward. So it is 12:05. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jackie, and I am your co host today, along with Peter Daniels from the PDC Group and Mr. Thomas E. Skeeter, our Chief Mental Health Officer. Skeeter the third, sorry. Thank you. So PDC Group presents today Who Will You Be After the Exit? This is a live conversation on identity foreclosure legacy and life after business ownership. Your speaker is going to be Peter G. Daniels. He is a SEEPer and founder of the PDC Group, and Mr. Thomas E. Skeeter III, our Chief Mental Health Officer. So, Peter, we're going to go ahead and get you on and get started.
All
Welcome.
righty. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out of the day to join us. We do appreciate you doing that. This is a very important topic that we're going to continue doing. I'm looking forward to working with Thomas in creating not just this is our webinar, but we're also going to create some workshops after this. A reason being is that what we've found in exit planning, or what we now call business wealth management, is that most business users, after exiting their business, what happens is they go through a time of what's called discomfort. They have an unhappiness. So 75% of business users, after they sell their business, are unhappy for two reasons. One, they think they could have gotten more money. We all think we could get more money no matter what it is. And two is that their identity is lost. That means, who am I without my business? Very similar to if an athlete would get hurt, what is his identity? Or if some people there's a person I met a couple of weeks back, and she actually expanded on the topic, talking about divorces, people losing their jobs, what's going on now in the government. That could be attributed to. That's something I'll reach out, I'll let Thomas address. But our focus is primarily around business users, and we know statistically that 75% of them are unhappy because they are no longer have an identity that was related to their job. So with that, I'm going to, Thomas, you're muted. Let me unmute
Yeah,
you. There you
no,
go.
I'm fine. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Peter.
great.
Uh-huh.
So I met Thomas maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I was at a speaking event and mentioned that what I just did. And Thomas came over and said to me, you know what that is? That's called identity foreclosure. That's where the term came from. I didn't know it existed.
Mhm.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Skeeter, let him introduce himself and tell you about his background, and then we'll go on with the interview.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Well, first of all, it's my pleasure just to join this esteemed group of business owners and professionals. I come to you guys. I'm a native of Washington, D.C. I did my studies at the University of Maryland, as well as Loyola University of Maryland and Georgetown University. I've been in and around just these circles for the last 20 years. And one of the things that I found when doing career counseling and working with professionals, business owners, and professional athletes is this bit of an identity challenge when they reach the end of one season of their lives. So one of the things I want to first do is give you guys a formal definition of identity foreclosure. Now, it was coined by a gentleman named James Marcia, but it's actually a spinoff of Erik Erikson's when he looked at what the four identities were. And when we talk about identity foreclosure, it's referring to the adoption of an identity that's often built around a single role. So, in terms of being a business owner, a CEO, you adopt a certain identity when you operate in that role. And then when you are exiting your business, whether you're selling it or you're leaving an existing business, there's a challenge. And Peter, you gave wonderful statistics with that 75% of unhappiness. There's a challenge with redefining yourself after you walk away from the structure of that role. You hear professional athletes always talk about, it's not just the games or the checks that they miss. It was being on a team bus, being in the locker room, having certain socialization patterns, and then just having patterns throughout the time of the year, whether they were in preseason training mode, during the season, or after the season. And a lot of times when business owners step away from their entities, they lose that structure that has been working so well for them. So one of the big tools, or one of the big things that I want to bring up is, now that you're stepping away from your business and you're stepping away from your company, what is your day-to-day structure going to look like? And how well have you prepared a new structure to replace the existing structure that you had? Peter, one of the things that I love that you had talked about was that when you had sold the business, you traveled, and then after a few months or what have you, it's like, okay, now what? And so I think it's also being able to answer that question. Sometimes we look at retirement as an end, and there's a term that I'm going to use. It's not becoming, it's recoming. And that's recoming who, we intend to be now that we've, accomplished this goal of exiting the business.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for that explanation. I tell you, part of our process when we're taking business users through that journey of transitioning their business, we give them an assessment. And one of the things that I find out of 75 to 80% of them, they'll say on the initial assessment is that I'm going to pursue my passion. And then over time, as we're going through the process of preparing their business, the clarity of what is that passion is not clear. Right.
Mm.
And a part of one of the things we're doing with the wealth management, the business wealth management ecosystem now is how do we assist them along the way to start weaning them off of that and becoming a new identity. Any thoughts on what maybe our best practices, or what can we do, or business users start doing to get a sense of transitioning, I guess it is, to that new identity? I don't know. What are you doing, right? If I, perfect example, I left my business, sold my business, etc. And now I'm in this thing, what we call is the 1 year vacation honeymoon is what it's called, right?
Mhm.
And right after that 1 year, for some reason, you kind of, your purpose, I guess, is what's meaning. What is going on, and how do you identify it, and what can they do in either before they do that, or if after, say they start going through that process after they sold it and now they find out where they are. Is there anything that they can do about it?
Well, most definitely. And I think one of the things is being able to do a self audit where you look at where your assets are now. And for many business owners who have either sold their companies or exited their business,
Mhm.
their assets are really their wisdom, their experience, the scars that they took along the way, as well as their narrative. So their wisdom, their
Mm.
experience, their scars, and their narrative. And then what you're doing is looking at new ways to apply all of that information in that package to really solve new problems.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you think about it, most business owners, I would say probably 99% of them are problem solvers by nature. And that's why they got into whatever
Mm.
particular field that they decided to enter into. So now the thing is, let me take all these components and let me create a new recipe where I can solve some new problems. Now, it may be same purpose, but different platforms. I may now come out of a for-profit model and then want to enter into a philanthropy or nonprofit model. I may
Mm.
want to take these talents into academia. I may want to mentor some younger business people. I may want to be an angel investor. But it's really being able to look at your assets, which is your experience, your scars, your narrative, and your wisdom, and just being able to apply it in new ways.
Well, let me ask you this. What is that word you said? Repeat. They said scars.
Uh-huh. So it was wisdom, scars, experience, and your narrative.
So
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Pete.
So expand on scars. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a personal one of mine. So I'll never forget me and two of my family members. We decided to enter into a franchise business, and we opened up a Rita's Ice on 10th and 8th Street in Northeast. This was in 2008, 2009.
Mm.
Now we bought an existing business, but we had never run a franchise, and we had never run one in DC before. We had run other businesses, but when we entered into this franchise, we weren't aware of some of the licensing requirements that were necessary to operate a business in Washington, D.C. So we got the lights on, we have all the inventory, we hired the people, and we had been open for about a month, Peter, when the health inspector came and she said, y'all don't have a basic business license that we can tie into your certificate of occupancy. Man, we looking at each other like we didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh
And
no.
so luckily what happened, and this is my hand of God, I went down to the licensing office in Southwest, and a childhood friend of mine was behind the desk. And man, it was just God intervening. He was able to walk me through the steps and really expedite my package in a way
Mhm.
to where we were able to get the basic business license. And then the lady who had came and done the inspection, she told me, I'm gonna give you guys 2 months to get this together. But by the time I come back, if it's not together, I'm gonna have to shut you down. So
Wow.
like having those experiences
Mhm.
is a scar that you learn from. And now, I've opened businesses. I'm always now very conscious of what's the administrative task? What are the rules for the jurisdiction where I'm going? And then what are the things that I need, particularly if I'm purchasing an existing entity? So the scars are that knowledge that you learn that was maybe a mistake that you learned from, or some information that you gleaned along the way
Mhm.
that wasn't in a book, that wasn't in a training or class.
So you mentioned those four things. So how do I apply those scars, as you say? How do you apply those in terms of um, I guess you're redoing your identity, recreating your identity. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you could, and so how would you apply again those four things? You said your wisdom. Let me make a note there. You said
Uh-huh.
wisdom,
Your wisdom, your scars,
scars,
your narrative, and your experience.
and you're leveraging those to
Mhm.
redefine your identity.
That's right. So I want you to think about it. You're not starting from scratch ever again.
Ah, wow, did
You're
not.
starting from a position of authority. And when
Hmm.
you've been able to see something from beginning, middle, and end, there's a certain level of experience and maturity that you have. So even though you're starting a new thing, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from a position of authority because of the wisdom, the scars, and the experience that you've gleaned.
Ah. And then what is there's a certain feeling you go through. I know when I worked in corporate America, I'm the VP of this and so on and so forth. And when I
Mhm.
left, thinking, hey, I'm going to start my own thing, but there was a feeling of, there was a feeling almost something was missing, right? When
Mhm.
I was there,
Mhm.
first, there was a phase where I went through where there was something was missing. Is that normal? Is there something we can do about that during that phase of I don't know yet what my
Mhm.
identity is yet. And I'm not going back, obviously. And
Mhm.
during that period of time, there's almost like a level of loneliness. I don't know if that's the right word.
No,
Um,
that's absolutely true. And so a lot of people remark on feeling isolated when they
uh,
step out of that corporate structure or when they step out of that business structure. So one of the things that you also have to do is look at like what are my needs for social support? And then like how do I glean those things from
hmm,
the people and the places that are around me? And so when we look at social support, we're looking at three areas. Practical support, which could be, day-to-day connectivity, having a check-in and a phone call. Emotional support, those are the people that I can call and just say, hey,
hmm,
I'm having some challenges. Why don't we go to lunch? And that way I can kind of connect and talk to you. And then informational support. And people who are tapped in for this call today, we're giving them informational support right now, where we're
hmm,
providing some details, some things that they can utilize and learn and grow from. So practical support, emotional support, and
yeah,
informational support.
information support. Got it.
Yeah, when you step out of some of these entities, you leave that part behind, and that's where it's like, man, I've been acculturated to this structure for so long. Now I got to reset myself.
Another thing yeah, that great. Thank you very much, Thomas. I have two questions. Before I forget this one, I'm going to make a note before I just forget this one. But one of the other thing is, how does this affect your spouse, right? So
Mhm,
sometimes some spouses are retiring at different times. In fact,
mhm,
I've had clients where one is retired and one is not,
mhm,
and it's almost one's already kind of redone their identity and the other one is, how do you deal with that?
mhm.
What would be your recommendations in terms of that?
Well, so the thing is like just like we talked about in terms of looking at your assets, you also now have to really focus on becoming self-aware and accountable. If we look at, the professional athletes like we talked about, a large number of their divorces take place after they're done playing because they come back into a structure and they haven't abandoned that former identity. So what happens is they still bring some of that entitlement along with them. They're used to being catered to in a certain way. And
Mhm.
when you're home, that role of CEO may not necessarily fit with your family system model. So it's very important for people who are exiting companies and selling businesses when they return home full time, they may have to integrate back into their family structure in a way where I can't come back as the boss. I got to come back as a peer or as a willing
Wow.
participant. And it's really understanding that those roles that you may have had in your
Mm,
business, they may not play at home. So we got to understand that those things are fluid,
wow.
and we need to be very self-aware about how we're going to apply those roles.
Unbelievable. That is a great point. I've never thought. Wow, I just made a big note of that one. And then what
Yeah.
about individuals that are not, they're not married, right?
Mhm.
And they are went through the process of
Mhm.
selling their business. What I
Mhm.
noticed is that when you're a business owner, you have a
Mhm.
bigger network, right? You have to do
Mhm.
sales because you have to do sales alone, right? And then you have to manage, like you said, we're problem solvers, we're the go-to people. Everything is dependent
Mhm.
right on you, right? And
Mhm.
now, and because of that, you have a bigger network, right? Just
Mhm.
because you're running a business. Now your network, once you're no longer, right, a business owner or in corporate America, you are now no longer have a network. It's because all the individuals may still be working. They may still be running companies.
Mhm.
That's something that I'm noticing with some of my clients is that their network just got extremely small,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so what can they do ahead of time to ensure that I don't know, they prepare. How do you prepare for that? I don't
Well,
know.
no, no, very, very good. That's a wonderful question. And so I want you to think about it like this: running a business, in most cases where people are married or they're single, that business can act as a jealous mistress because it's gonna require so much time from you. And as you're beginning to exit that role in your life, it's really about recreating healthy social structures for yourself outside of it. And a lot of times people are so focused on the task at hand in terms of running their companies that they haven't allowed their outside interests to develop. So one of the things that I would say is as you're landing the plane of selling your business or exiting your business, you start looking for some very formal ways to connect with other like-minded people. It could be playing pickleball at a local gym. It could be joining a book club. It could be becoming more active at your church. But like human beings are hardwired for connection. So
Mm,
it's finding some socialization that number one is comfortable for where you are in this season of your life. But then it's also being able to do it in a way that is proactive and preventative. Because a lot of what happens is people really undervalue the level of socialization they get in their business. And then when they exit, it's like, okay, and now what? But if you know you're going to sell and if you have a plan to exit and you're operating your exit strategy, one of the things that I would say is like start looking at what you're going to do in terms of socializing and then
mm,
really make intentional efforts to make those connections. So when you transition, it's like going from one group to the next. Think about it. When you were in high school, you had one group of friends that you hung out with. And then when you went to college, you had to discover a whole new socialization group.
yes.
This is just
Yes.
another transition in that way.
Oh, wow. Great for saying that. So, in one of the things we're doing with the PDC group, we just launched it, right? It's called the Business Wealth Management Ecosystem. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason one of the things we've launched that, there's multiple reasons, but one of them is we've created a framework now and a methodology that not just takes you through getting your business prepared. Our new philosophy is you treat your business as an asset, just like you would a portfolio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, once you start doing it, you don't wait to the last minute to invest in a 401k,
Mm-hmm.
right? You start doing it early. What we want to incorporate, and that's why I'm so glad that we met you. I'd like to get you into that ecosystem. How do, as we're going through the process, it takes roughly anywhere from 18 to 22 months to sell a business after you've spent the right amount of time to
Mm-hmm.
put your books in order. At least 3 years, you want to get your books in order because if they're not in order, that's going to affect your valuation from a buyer. Is there a process that we could incorporate, or what you think that how would we build that process in based on that can we build the process in is the first question. And then
Mm-hmm.
two, can we customize it based on that individual? So I'm single, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would that be a different customization than if I am married? And
Mm-hmm.
third, it's I'm married, but the kids are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three, or my kids are gone and I'm not married, but I'm single and my kids are gone. Is there a process? Is there something that can be done that incrementally? I know it can't happen overnight. So the question is, A, can it be done?
Mm-hmm.
Two, can it be customized?
Mm-hmm.
And then
No,
three, how long do you think that process should take and how long they should plan for it?
okay, no, very good. So first of all, here's the backbone of what you're asking me. So the first piece would be to take the individual and then walk them through a series of like in questions where they can look at, okay, a level of accountability, self-awareness, their ability to make behavioral change and then to do it consistently. So accountability, self-awareness, behavioral change, and consistency. So that's the first thing. We want to be able to start 18 months out and say, hey,
Oh,
what do you
18
want?
months.
Yeah, 18 months. What do you want your post-business life to look like? And then what we would do is also set them up where we would create some SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable,
Hmm.
relevant, and time bound. And so many people, they want to set like a health goal. Like, I've been working so much. I want to work out more. I want to go play
Mm.
golf. I want to do some of these things. Okay, cool. Now let's set a SMART goal for it. I'm going to start meeting with a golf pro every Wednesday from 8 to 10 a.m. And I'm going to start working on my game. So when
Mm.
I have all the time, I can start traveling around the country playing at specific courses. I want to, go to my doctor, get a full blood panel. I want to see what my lipids are like, what my cholesterol level is. I want to go and rediscover my health. I want to take time now with my spouse. Our kids are
Mm.
out of the house. We may want to look at downsizing so we can have less of a footprint and we can move around a little bit. And so it's like being able to really have people do a level of self awareness to see where they are and then be accountable to make the changes. And then when we map out what we're going to do, it's basically we're all on an X axis and saying, hey, okay, I'm starting this in this time frame. I need to have this done by this time, and then I want to have this done by that time. And we manage the process, a lot of checks
Mm.
and balances, but being able to really manage it through a level of self awareness and accountability.
Oh, all right. And so, yeah, I just want to make some notes here. So you said about 18 months. You
Hmm.
talked about accountability, self-awareness.
Hmm.
How do you do the accountability? Are they working with a partner? They're working with somebody like yourself? Who's
Hmm.
holding them accountable?
Well, it all depends on the person's personal ecosystem. So, like, if they needed somebody to hold them accountable, let's say, like, as a professional, you or I, we could meet with them on a monthly basis to make sure that they're meeting certain milestones along the way. But then we may also want to have them bring in an accountability partner that they can check in with on a weekly basis or a daily basis. Sometimes that accountability partner could be, a spouse, but in the case of somebody's not married, it could be a friend or, a inner circle participant who can say, hey, okay, I'm gonna hold you accountable. You said we were gonna sell the big house and now we're gonna move to something smaller, but we haven't packed any boxes yet. And we're in month six. We talked about this 6 months ago. So come on, we're gonna go to Home Depot together. And this weekend, we're just gonna pack up and we're gonna have a weekend where we're gonna give away stuff. And like we really just started that way. And it's really about having that level of accountability where you got these different check-ins so people are not in a vacuum. Because you got to
Right.
understand isolation and depression, they're cousins, like they're related. So the
Mm.
more a person is isolated, the greater chances for them to be depressed.
Wow. Jeez, that's unbelievable. All right. So 18 months.
Mhm.
There is a process and it can be customized by the individual and their environment. I mean, their
That's
environment.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, they're going to be an accountability partner, is what you're saying. They
Hmm.
should have accountability partner. This is absolutely amazing. So my question, the next thing I would have for you, does age make the matter? So what we're seeing now, there are some business owners
Hmm.
that are actually in their 40s. There's not a lot of them, but
Hmm.
they did the right thing. So we're not necessarily talking about older people all the time, right? We're talking
Hmm.
about individuals like say in their 40s, right? 40s.
Well, I think, Peter, the most important thing is that people are season sensitive to where they
Mm,
are in life. And so, just like naturally, we have 4 seasons, right? We have winter, spring, summer, and fall. We
mhm,
also have due season and do not season. So, like for
mm.
instance, if you're 40
What
years
you mean?
old, but you got an eighth grader and a sixth grader, this may not be the time to move everybody down to Aruba because you got kids that are in
Right.
school, they got different things that they have
Mhm.
going on. So, one of the things that you want to look at is like with your calendar age, who are the people who I'm responsible for? Whether it's an aging parent, whether it's a young child, whether it's a
Mm,
pet, and then I got to also assess where they are in life because I could have the bag, the money is secured, I got all my needs met, but I still have people that I'm responsible for and have to answer to. So I have to take a 360 view and see how everybody
mm.
is and where they are before I make some of these final choices. Because sometimes people have the dream of, yep, I hit it big, I done made the money, now I'm going
Right.
to disappear. But your kids still go to school 5 minutes from your house. So it's like, are you going to disrupt their lives? how much disruption does the selling of your business have to have an impact on your family system or on the people that you really care about?
You know what that is? That just you just brought something up. So I do have a client that there's a huge age difference between them,
Hmm.
right? And they had kids, and so the kids are still young relatively,
Hmm.
and the other one is retired,
Hmm.
and the other one is running the business and taking care of the kids.
Hmm.
And just being observant, you just see there's a little bit of stress more in
Hmm.
one versus the other.
Hmm.
And while the other one is still going through that identity crisis, right? So you have
Hmm.
two things happening at one time. One is trying to refine themselves, redefine themselves, and the other one is still in the day-to-day grind. I mean, it's only one time I've ever seen that, but what would you do in a scenario like that?
Well, the first thing I would do is have them sit down and really talk about some realistic goals. And
Mm,
like that, I talked about smart, like the realistic is the important part. So for the person who is retired, okay, what do you want this final season or, like
mm,
these latter stages of your life to look like? And one of the first things I always ask is like, where's your health at? Because like your
mm,
health is a real determinant of your quality of life. So I want to know like, okay, how independently are you able to get around? How can you do activities of daily living? And then like, what's your plan? Where's your support system? With those things we talked about,
mhm,
practical, emotional, informational. For the person who still has the dependence, what's the plan for them? And like, what's the age appropriate things that you're working on in terms of that? And then
mm,
is the exit strategy for them to leave the home, or are you going to create a space where they can return home? I have a college graduate who's living under my roof. She graduated 2 years ago, but I know she's going to get a doctorate, so I'm not forcing her out of the home right now. So, it's making
mm.
me have to manage larger space than I would if she was gone. And that's her on the wall right there at the top.
Oh,
And so no, so
congratulations.
I have oh, thank you very much. So you have to take all of those factors into account. And I think sometimes, we get so excited about this next stage that we don't realize there's a lot of different details that we got to make sure we check off so we can
Mm.
transition into it smoothly. And it's a transition. It's a transition.
Ah, the transition, that's a key. Same thing we say with having people prepare their business. It's a
Mhm.
transition,
It's
and
a
it's a
transition.
transition. It's not an overnight sensation.
That's right.
Absolutely. Wow. This is absolutely great information. So one thing, so let's talk about now, we talked about what the situation is. For everybody that's listening, you've got what we sent out a scorecard. And on that scorecard, I'd like you to just to take some time. If you did not receive it or you haven't downloaded it, take some time and look at that scorecard and score yourself on that scorecard. And then there is another document that Thomas provided that will help you to kind of, once you score yourself, to kind of look through. It's kind of a worksheet that you could go through. But I'd be very interested to know for some of the folks on the line, if you just put it in the chat, what was your score on the scorecard? It'd be very interesting to know how that's going. And then while you're doing that, Thomas, tell us where you're located. Maybe you could tell
Okay.
us where you're located and give us your information so that if anybody's interested in following up with you, that they can.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm located in Laurel, Maryland. I have my
Mhm.
office that's located right in the Russet neighborhood off of 295. So I see patients here Monday through Saturday. And so if anybody would like to connect, we can meet virtually or in person. And I have a plethora of experience and different information that I can share for business owners and for people who are in the process of transitioning.
I'm just getting that information down. Great. Any responses, Jax, in the chat? Anybody that took their scorecard? Okay, great. There's his information there.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I haven't
Mhm.
seen a response yet in there. They're
Okay.
probably doing it now. I think
Okay.
they might not have done it before. Okay, there we go.
Gwen, I know who that is. She says,
Gwen
mine
is
is
so
very
funny, right?
low.
Gwen says my chest.
That is so funny. Thanks, Gwen. And Gwen, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. But yeah, that's great. She said hers was low. I know she's gonna, I don't want to say, but I think she's on the farm. That's all I can say. She's on the farm. It's too funny. Yeah, yeah. No, this is great, dude. I think it's actually something that I've experienced myself, and I'll be just open with everybody. I went through a divorce and I had to get myself reoriented, onto what it is. Again, I have not sold a business before, but I've known individuals that have, obviously, and I've known people that have lost their businesses due to just various different things. 9/11, I know somebody very personal that 9/11 actually what happened, hacked them to close their business, and it took them a while to actually get readjusted. And they talked about, they were very spiritual, so fortunately they had the church to help them to get through that. Should we start building in support systems now? Now that we know about this, right? And it's going to be, like I said, I'm going to very much include this in the business wealth management ecosystem that we're building, where we're going to take business units all the way through, not just through immediately, but building their business like an asset and manage it like a portfolio over a period of time. And then we're going to also make sure that they can transition it, get it right away to the M&A folks where their business is already set, so they don't have to worry about selling their business and going through business brokers and all of that. They could get it sold right away because we'll set that up. I want to build that process in, right?
Mhm.
If it's possible, but getting some support system, what kind of support systems would you even, when you say support systems, what can we do today to start, to start building those things in ahead of time?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. And one of the things that I want you to think about is that your support system needs to be fluid because the capacity and the capability of the people may change over time. So, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, if one of the people in your support system is older, they have been a mentor, they play these different roles.
Hmm.
But there may have been a time where they could come meet you and, they're able to travel independently. But like now that they're older, they can't do as much. So you have to be able to kind of assess the people that you have around you and then make sure that the roles that you have for them to play are within their wheelhouse. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is that they either keep the same support over their lifespan, and then when it no longer serves them, they're afraid to invite new people in. So you want to always think about your support system being fluid. And then the second piece is that when we look at practical support, emotional support, and informational support, those are all very different vehicles in terms of getting support. So, informational support, think about it. We're meeting with people today virtually. They didn't have to come in person to see us to get this information. And then once they have it, they own the information for themselves. And then you're even going to supply a recording later. So they
Yes.
got this information really in a passive way that's then going to be passed back to them that they can have it. But
Hmm.
now, emotional support, you need a little bit more connectivity. And then you also need reciprocity because most people don't emotionally support in one direction. They emotionally support in two directions, where it's like, Peter, I support you, and then you support me, and we're there for each other emotionally. So you
Hmm.
want to make sure when you're selecting people who are going to provide some emotional support, it's not only do they have the ability to support me, but then do I have the capacity and ability to support them
Hmm.
in return? Because those then become way more meaningful. And then practical support is just that, it's practical. I mean, my cleaning ladies just left this morning. That's practical support for me. Because them coming to do a deep clean on these bathrooms and everything, it lets my mental just be free of even having to worry about that. And most
Right.
people don't think about that. And I pay for that practical support.
Right.
But
Wow.
that is a component of practical support for me. And so it's like being able to understand each one of those areas and then having the right people in the right place. It's really about alignment at every level. And it's like, do I have the right people? And if I don't have the right people, what do I need to do to
Wow.
recruit the right people?
Gotcha. I'm taking notes here. The practical support, I'm glad you explained that. I was trying to understand how did that work. But that's excellent. And how do we So if I'm going to start building this into my
Mm-hmm.
process, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
and I can only speak for myself, but as you get older, you're a little bit more selective, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
I am, right? I get a little bit more selective of who I'm going to let into my circle, and I think that's why it may be harder, right? As you're older, to try to get newer people in. Should I join organizations, or what should I do to start trying to identify the right people that I want to start to draw into? To be my support and being able to support them, right?
Well, three words: trust your gut. And it's like you didn't get to be successful by accident. You've been a team builder for I don't know how long. I mean, look at the people you put together today. So you take
Hmm.
that team building skill set and you just apply it to your personal life, not a professional one. And so the thing is, yeah, I do want some third party influence because I want to have like minded people around me.
Hmm.
But then I also want to make sure I understand my own personal constellation. Okay. So when we think about personal
Yeah,
constellation,
what is that?
Okay, there's confidants. Those are the people who are closest to us. And the
Mm.
word confidant comes from the fact that we can trust them with confidential information. This is
Ah,
not a large number of people, okay? But we have
okay.
confidants. That's my inner circle. Then we have comrades. Comrades, they're not bad people, but they're more friends. But they're not somebody that I would necessarily give confidential information to. So like
Okay.
a comrade is somebody who we may be close, but I'm not going to let them drive my wife to the airport. Whereas a confidant, I would. You understand what I mean?
And they do.
Yeah. So we got confidants, comrades, and then the last one is constituents. And
Mm.
constituents are just that. As long as I'm doing something that benefits them, we are all in the same way, and it's all good. But the minute
Right.
I do something they don't agree with, they fall to the wayside. And one of the things that happens is a lot of times people will have the wrong people in the different constellation circles.
Ah.
Because I'll have people who I should have treated as a constituent, and I'll treat them as a confidant and give them some inside information. They use it against me. So I want to make sure that I'm constantly evaluating my personal constellation, and I got the right people in the right place.
Thomas, that is so, oh my God, what did you call that? The constellation?
It's called a personal constellation. Yeah.
Personal constellation.
Hmm.
Wow. And you know, you tend to learn that the hard way. I
All
don't know
right.
any other way to, I don't know
Well,
any other way to learn
that's
that one.
but that's the scars that we talk about.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the
There you
scars.
go. Right, right. And that goes back to the, what I'm going to, you're getting a thicker skin, right? So as you get older, the more experience you have, you're getting a thicker skin. So what happens is that confidence box, I think that's actually going to make it harder.
Hmm.
You know what I mean, right? Because the older I get, the thicker my skin gets, right?
Hmm.
So I could clearly deal with the constituents. In fact, I'm gonna say that the more I think about this, as I'm getting older, the constituency, if I'm not doing something, I'm still active and I'm doing things, but you may not have many constituents at all.
That's
Right.
right.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
Hmm.
and the comrades are going to be less, and the confidence of this. So I could actually see the process of you getting more and more isolated in a smaller and smaller group. Unbelievable.
Or you can look at it this way: the relationships that you do have will have more meaning because you're able
Mm.
to assign more energy and more focus on those relationships. And so, like Jay Z, the American rapper, he had a funny saying. He said, "I looked around and there wasn't many of us, but then I found out that was plenty of us." And what he meant by that is like you can do a lot with a small group of people. You don't need a whole
Right.
lot of people. And
Wow.
business is really about relationships at the core. So even
Mm.
as we're exiting, we got to become our personal CEOs. And one of those things is that, yeah, okay, I may only have two or three people that I talk to, but it's the right two or three.
Right, right, right. It's funny, you say that. So there is the comrade group and a confidant group, right? So
Mhm.
there's a thing called, what I do is I try to surround myself with individuals, and I could just use myself, but I know that other business owners do. There's a mastermind group of the folks that kind of think the way I think in
Mhm.
terms of what I'm trying to achieve
Mhm.
business-wise, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the confidence group, there may be one or two of those involved, not even them, that I'll have some confidence, where I'm going to confide in
Mhm.
certain things. But where do you think a mastermind group fits in that? Those, what do you call that? The constellation, yeah.
Personal constellation, yeah.
Personal constellation, right? Where would
Mhm.
that fit? Because some of us are still working through getting our business. It takes at least 3 years or so to get through the process of exiting your business.
Mhm.
How would you apply the mastermind group? Because a lot of times they tell us, hey, get a mastermind group. I just
Mhm.
was in DC yesterday, but I was speaking about exit planning with the Greater Black Washington Chamber
Mhm.
of Commerce.
Well, and so this is the thing, those layers are fluid. So they could start
Mm,
out, the mastermind group could start out as constituents and comrades. And then
mm,
over time, you see people through seasons of life and you see how their character is revealed. Because, like, initially, we're going to meet everybody's representative. And it's not until, like, true relationships start after I can say no and you accept me. Most people are
mm,
not really connected to you, they're connected to your yes. So when you understand that, like, the real
mm.
relationship starts after I can say no and we can still have a relationship, then what happens is I can allow people to kind of go through this strainer where I can see, man, me and Peter, we started out in 2025 as comrades. Now, man, we traveling around the world, we done connected. I done met his family, he met mine. Next thing I know, we confidants. And so it has to be something that's organic and natural but it's
Mm.
not something that can be rushed. And sometimes when people are fearful of isolation, they'll speed into new relationships without doing the proper vetting.
Right, then. Are we talking about business owners now, or are we talking about relationships?
No, it's this
I'm
life.
not sure what we're talking
No,
about
this
anymore.
business and life. And
Wow,
that's the other
unbelievable.
thing as you're going through the identity foreclosure process, you are vulnerable. So you have to be very aware of
Mm.
some of these vulnerabilities.
I think that is such a great point
Mhm.
because you may lock into something or bad habits, right? Or
Mhm.
picking up bad habits, whether it's alcohol, all kinds of different things because that is a great point.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, we've covered all the things I wanted to talk about. Does anybody have any questions for I'm going to open it up now for questions for Thomas that they may have. But Thomas, absolutely. I mean, we could talk. I'm going to get you back on, right?
Yeah,
Because
no problem.
we could talk about so many different things. And I know that we're putting together this workshop. I think we targeted October for the workshop.
Yes, sir.
We're going to put together a workshop that we're going to invite people to and expand on this topic. And may not necessarily, again, my focus, because that is the service, is to business owners. But I think this topic is something that we could take in multiple directions. And again, we'll go ahead and you'll see the workshop and we'll get some feedback from you guys on what you'd like it to go if you want it to go in a different direction. As you know, this webinar is called An Entrepreneur's Journey. So we're going to have speakers coming on talking about different topics. But I think this was a great topic. It's something that I have to live every day because I help individuals transition their business. And so, Thomas, you and I obviously are going to be working together for quite a bit of time as we continue to get them through the process. Jackie,
Absolutely.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, and one of the points I wanted to leave everybody with a little bit of a doggy bag is just to recognize that change is hard, and that for human beings having the appropriate response to change, it does require some trial and error. So there is no perfect landing, so to speak, but
Mm.
you can land with wholeness. So the key is to really pursue wholeness over perfection, and just understand that I'm going through a change. It's a transition. There are going to be periods that are going to be uncomfortable, and at times I may need support more than what's in my wheelhouse already.
What define wholeness? Are you okay? Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, wholeness is, man, not lacking in any area or wanting for anything.
Okay.
Yeah, not wanting in any area or lacking for anything.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, if we don't have any questions, I know Mr. Thomas has to go on with his day. Is
Uh-huh.
there anybody have any questions? Jackie, anybody put any questions in the chat? Here's
No
what I'm going to
questions
ask.
in the chat yet.
All right. If I'd like to everybody just to ask them, put a one in the chat if you would like us to have Mr. Thomas back on again and expand this a little longer. Put a two in the chat if you enjoyed this just in general and want to see more of these type of webinars on what we call an entrepreneur journey.
Brian Harper, thank you very much. One times 1,000. You're so good for my
Oh,
ego.
wow. Okay, we got to get him back. This is great. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. And let me ask you this, guys, you can make this a three. Is there any particular topics, right? Oh, thank you. Oh, wow. Look at this. This is great. I think we hit onto something here. Um, Great, very good, guys. If you, we're going to send something out and try to see about if you'd like to expand beyond just being a business owner. Just drop a three in the chat if you want it to be beyond. The next time we get it on, we go beyond that and try to find a specific topic around identity foreclosure. And just let us know that. I don't know if everybody heard me there, but if just give me maybe a high sign, then maybe put it that way. If you would be interested in us going through interested in participating in the webinar the workshop, I'm sorry, that we're looking to put forward in October. Romantic and socially. Wow,
Mhm.
that's a topic there. Okay. So,
And if it's okay for me to just add, with Mr. Skeeter, I think that based on what I do as a wellness advocate, that for the next webinar, I think that especially with one of the guests asking to go over relationship and
mm,
that type that we together definitely can create the agenda for that. I work with a lot of people, and I find that their emotional status
Hmm.
definitely defines every aspect of their life and decisions that they make.
Hmm.
okay. All righty. Put a one in the chat if you would be interested in attending one of the workshops that we're putting together in October. Is everybody
They're
still
already there. Thomas needs to write a
The
book,
book, yeah.
Thomas.
Hugh, I hear
okay?
you.
Okay, let me just see what they're coming. Jamal can say yes, they would want to do the workshop. I see
Yes,
one.
and yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Let me see. Dwayne said, wow, he'd be interested in the workshop.
Everybody's in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, and see, this is
Well,
what it's all about, building community. And that's the piece that when you get with like-minded individuals who are moving forward, we can go fast alone, but we can go further together. And so I think the key
mhm.
element is look at this is, we just build a community. And in the times that we're living in now, we need to be more connected than ever. I think that's been the piece for our segment of population that's been missing. And sometimes entrepreneurs, they have to go off on their own so much that they operate
Oh,
outside of a pack. And we just creating a really healthy wolf pack that everybody can participate in.
wow. It's great that the African saying that just said you could go fast alone, but you
Hmm.
could go far together, right?
You can go
I
far
do know.
together, yeah.
Yeah, I know that one. Great. Well, Thomas, thank you very much. Really, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Okay,
No,
somebody
and
just
then
put
before
something
I
in.
check out, Gwen, I love that multi-generational advocacy. No, I love that
Oh,
post business. Come on,
oh,
because like
wow.
what happens is most of the wealth transfer stops after the second transfer and after the second generation. So it's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
preparing those tools. No, I really appreciate that.
Different levels of knowledge is to build these communities. Okay, we will do that. We'll make sure, Thomas, let's put that in the workshop, right? That's
Yeah,
a primary topic there to put in the workshop.
I love that.
This is
Yeah,
excellent. Well, guys,
excellent guy.
thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate you. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone, for taking time out of your day. I know that it was so. I really appreciate you stopping in, and looking forward to the next entrepreneur's journey, and of course, looking forward to having the workshop with Mr. Thomas Skeeter. Thomas,
yeah.
thank you very much. This is
Thanks,
great.
guys.
Take care.
All right,
Jackie,
peace,
by
guys.
the way, Jackie's my
Thank you,
sister.
Thomas.
Thank you, Jackie,
Thanks,
for being
guys.
the host. She's in
Thank
Miami,
you, Peter.
Florida.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, peace, guys.